In this video, let's talk about needs. Imagine you lived your life on the brink of being dehydrated. Imagine how miserable and painful that would be. And the problem is not that you don't have water sources. As a matter of fact, you have several water sources. The problem is your water sources are not good ones. They keep running out. They keep disappointing. They keep failing. That's the way so many people live their lives emotionally. Because just as we have physical needs, water, food, shelter, air, we have emotional needs as well. Your emotional needs can be described with many different words: acceptance, belonging, value. For the sake of this video, we're going to use the word love, because the word love pretty much sums up any need that we may have. So just as we have physical needs, we also have emotional needs. And those emotional needs are very, very real. Now, for some, that is the hurdle to get to the place where you embrace the fact that you have emotional needs, and those emotional needs are very real. We go throughout our life thinking that we're supposed to try to not be needy. The fact is we're created needy. We're created with a need for love. We're created to be incomplete without love, all right? So, like I said, for some people, that is the hurdle, is to embrace the fact, I need love. All right, so let's turn to the creation story to find some truths when it comes to these emotional needs. Now listen, it really doesn't matter if you believe the creation story is literal, figurative, a poem. We can still use it to find truth, all right? So in the beginning, God created Adam. And plan A was for God to be the source of Adam's need for love, and for Adam to make God the source of his need for love. Source is a big word when it comes to this subject. We're going to come back to this word several times. So plan A is for God, who created Adam with the need for love, for Adam to make God the source of that need. Now, God did not want Adam to be alone. Put him to sleep, took a rib, made Eve. When Adam saw Eve, he said, bones of my bones and flesh of my flesh. What I was doing alone, now we're going to do together. So plan A, I believe, was for God to be Adam's source for love, God to be Eve's source for love, and for them to share this with each other. All right? So we know what happened. So you can't have love without a choice. So God put two trees in the garden and said, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, stay away from that tree, because the day you eat it, you're going to die. All right. Now we know what happened. The enemy came along and convinced them God's not good, convinced them God's holding out on you, and they took their life in their own hands, stopped making God the source of their need for love, and basically made themselves the source. And this was broken. They ate of the tree, they experienced a spiritual death, and all of a sudden they realized for the first time, I'm naked. I don't know about you, but I've never been naked and not known it, right? When I'm naked, it's all I know. But for the first time, they realized that they were naked. Before the fall, they were so secure in the love of God that they really wasn't even self-aware. But they sinned, experienced the death, eyes were open, they realized they were naked, and then they felt two things: shame and fear. They felt shame, they felt fear. The fear drove them to hide. And then they went to work trying to cover their own shame. So hiding and trying to cover shame. Sound familiar? That's what we do today. The two emotions that came after the fall are the same two emotions causing so much conflict and frustration in our lives today. So they hid, felt shame, and so they went to work trying to cover it. They took fig leaves and began to sew an apron together to cover their shame. All right. So then scripture says that the voice of God came walking in the cool of the day. I don't know what that means, but it sounds amazing. But the voice of God comes walking in the cool of the day, finds them, and basically God preaches the gospel to them through imagery. In other words, I believe he was saying, your fig leaves are not going to work. I have to cover your shame. So he killed animals, spilled blood, took the skins and covered Adam and Eve, saying, I cover your shame. Now at this point, I believe that the relationship between God and Adam and Eve was reinstated. However, we got some problems. Adam and Eve are now in this fallen state, but yet redeemed. And that's the state we find ourselves in today. They still have this memory of fear, the memory of shame. They have what's called indwelling sin. We're going to have a whole video on that down the road. They have indwelling sin. They have a memory. So we're in this fallen state. And making God the source for our needs kind of feels like this. It's just not as natural as it was before the fall. And when we become born again, this is the condition we find ourselves in. Is that it's not just natural to make God the source for our emotional needs, because again, we are fallen beings. All right, so when Adam and Eve figures out, hey, these squiggly lines are not natural, they're going to most likely turn to each other, making each other the source for their emotional needs. Wife, I make you the source for my emotional need for love. Husband, I make you the source. Now, God knew they were going to do this, so he said, I'm going to add conflict here. Now, most people think this is for punishment. Maybe, but I believe that the intent behind adding conflict to this relationship was to reinstate plan A, which is come back to me. This is not going to work. You're fallen. You're not going to be able to be each other's sources, so I'm going to add conflict to drive you back to me. When Adam figures out she's not doing a very good job being my God, he is likely to turn to the job, especially for things like worth and security. God knew he was going to do this, so God said, I'm adding conflict here. Again, Adam, come back to me. Eve's primary job was the kids. Now, I do not believe that women are supposed to just stay home and have babies. I do not believe that. But here's the thing. A baby can live without dad. A baby dies without mom. And women know this. And so a lot of times women will look to their kids as a source for their need of worth. They need me. And when you're needed, it gives you value. So they look to their kids as a source for their emotional needs. And that goes sideways really quick. All right. So God said, I'm going to add conflict here as well. Hey, Adam can turn to the kids. This happens a lot. We see it a lot in counseling, that Adam turns to the kids, especially when sports are involved and things like that. There'll be conflict there. Eve can turn to her job as a source for emotional needs. There'll be conflict there. We can turn many different places. Drugs, alcohol, that's a big one, right? Technology, friends, hobbies. There are so many things that we can get trapped into making our source for our emotional need of love. And what we're going to find is no matter where we turn, give it enough time, because by the way, this all might work for a little bit, but in time, everything fails us because we're designed to make God the source for our emotional needs. All right. Receiving God's love is something that's learned. And some personality types have it easier than others. Your past, your upbringing can make it easier or harder. But learning to receive God's love freely and making him the source takes time. So be patient with yourself. But God created you with these needs. And therefore, the one that created us with the needs is designed to be the source for the needs. Now, in no way am I saying that you should start to isolate yourself. Okay, I don't need to make the job, kids, wife, my source, so I just need to detach and isolate. In no way am I saying that. All these things can be conduits of God's love, avenues, ways that God meets our need for love. So as Adam makes God the source for his emotional need, God can use Eve. As Eve makes God the source for emotional needs, uses Adam, right? And you know who is your source by following your expectations. Expectations is the source that leads you back to the fire and shows you who or what you are attempting to make the source for your emotional needs. If you've been pumping the wrong well, you know it. You know it. And maybe you didn't know that that well is the wrong well. Maybe you thought that you're just supposed to try to fix the well, or maybe you're supposed to just try harder. But if you've been pumping the wrong well and the well keeps failing you over and over, that's God's design. It may be difficult for us to get our head around that. But when you understand that what God is doing is driving us back to the original intent, to the way that we were created, you will see that even these conflict and frustrations is love. So may you embrace your need for love, and may you allow that need to drive you to its source. If this video has been helpful, make sure you click that like and subscribe button. Thank you for watching.